countries of the Global South. Mi nombre es Carlos Ferreira, director general del mes de acción ante el calor extremo en los países y territorios del sur global. And we are opening this day, on the 27th of February 2025, exactly at 10:24 Argentinian time, 15:24 South African time, another edition of the international workshops of the month of action. Estamos iniciando a esta hora, 10:24 de la mañana en la República Argentina, las 3:24 de la tarde, hora de Sudáfrica, una nueva edición del taller internacional sobre acción sobre el calor extremo. Obviously, this month of action is centered on the needs of communities in order to face this severe problem. Por supuesto, esta edición, como todas las otras, las 50 reuniones que este mes de acción contiene, están dirigidas a fortalecer, empoderar las comunidades de base, las comunidades locales para poder gestionar el calor en sus ámbitos tanto familiares como vecinales, como laborales, como educativos, entre otros. This month of action has an objective to empower, to consider the citizen, the normal citizens, a right holder in terms of their needs to manage extreme heat at their local level, at their communities, at their family, in this home, at the neighborhoods where they live, but also at their workplace, and also in the place where we have children and in the schools, but also at universities that really need to be prepared in front of this problem of extreme heat. Y por supuesto, el objetivo es capacitar, empoderar a estas personas, no solamente para el momento actual, sino para el futuro. Y desde ese punto de vista, hemos convocado a numerosas personalidades para poder hablar del tema en función del amigo Raúl Rojas, manager of Radio Clima Internacional. Hola Raúl, ¿cómo te va? ¿Cómo estás? Thanks very much, Raúl. He is giving the welcome to the people at the meeting, especially the people from South Africa. And can you tell us, nos puedes decir, Raúl, por dónde estamos transmitiendo, how we are broadcasting this seminar, this workshop? Well, Raúl Rojas said that anyone who likes to follow this can follow it alive in www.radioclimainternacional.org, or they can also look at it in YouTube in the space called Clima TV International YouTube. This is the place where you can see this, and you can follow it even after the meeting. Voy a introducir al amigo Busi Masilela, director por Sudáfrica. I will introduce Busi Masilela, director for Africa. In this meeting, how are you, Busi? How is the weather today in your place in South Africa?
Good day, everyone. Good day to the listeners. Good day to the communities and everyone who is listening and being part of this meeting. It's Vusi Maslela, a director in South Africa, part of the Extreme Heat Project, of which we are in the Global South, and having Africa been the most affected by climate change. And today, hopefully, we'll address the issues that will help our communities, the elderly and the youth, in order to be aware of the changes that our climate is taking. Thank you.
Thank you, Busi Masilela. Dice que realmente, bueno, el objetivo está muy contento de estar en esta reunión. Él es el director para África del mes de acción y espera poder lograr que la gente, en particular los grupos vulnerables, se enteren del problema del cambio climático y, por supuesto, trabajar en los temas vinculados a también Extreme Heat, lo que él denomina el proyecto de calor extremo. Julia Paredes Villasís, how are you? Julia Paredes Villasís is the Regional Director for Latin America and the Caribbean. ¿Cómo estás, Julia? Carlos Ferreira te saluda.
Buenos días, Carlos. Buenos días a todas las personas que están en la sala y también a las personas que nos escuchan. Están en vivo. Pude ver ya la transmisión, entonces es importante saludarles, Carlos.
Muy bien, muchas gracias. Julia, thanks very much. Julia, she says that it's important that we understand that this conference, this workshop is being followed internationally, alive by many people through Radio Clima. Interesting enough, today we have at this time around 110 people connected from the 5 continents in which we are operating this month of action and this African Week. En estos momentos tenemos, siguiendo lo que dice Julia, unas 1.100 personas que están conectadas a nuestra radio desde los 5 continentes en los cuales este mes de acción tiene territorialidad para plantear su línea de trabajo. Okay, well, I just will change to English, so we have this meeting entirely in this language because we are working in Africa. Then we hopefully in the next few weeks we can get these meetings put into Spanish, at least subtitles. But the very interesting meeting because we're coming from a meeting from Zimbabwe yesterday that was attended by many people from the communities, elderly people, women, young people, youngsters, that really were participating very fully. That was in hands of Mr. Mek Sibanda, who is the director for Zimbabwe. I don't know if Mek Sibanda is with us. I can see her name. I cannot see. Are you with us at this meeting, Mek? Can you introduce yourself if you are in? Well, he's not in. Probably he will get a little bit later because he told me that he will be participating. Okay, well, just to make a brief introduction to the question of this month of action. This month of action appears in the world with very good impact because we are talking about a problem that is central to climate change, which is the problem of damage and loss caused by extreme heat. And why extreme heat? Because extreme heat is the variable in the life of humans and in the life of animals and in the life of the vegetable populations that are most affected by this principal vector of climate change. As a matter of fact, this component of climate change to us as human beings and the people who is behind this months of action, people who are very interested in protecting life, quality of life, and economic impacts of climate change, talks about extreme heat, because extreme heat is a central and independent variable that really produces tremendous damage in societies that are not prepared to confront extreme heat and then climate change. This is called somehow in the international and scientific jargon as adaptation. But the word adaptation doesn't mean anything for people, as many of the things that have been occurring in this area. Because when I see the analysis of climate change, climate emergency at the global level, we see clearly that at the global level, global governance has installed the idea that, and the concept that climate change is a global problem with common responsibilities, but obligation differentiated between the countries that really are A, producing climate change, E, countries, B, that are suffering climate change. Although climate change is a global problem determined by human beings and determined specifically by corporate business that impact in nature, and some of the people talks about environment, no, impacts on nature, because when something impacts on vegetable life, on animal life, on human life, we are impacted very clearly on life and on nature. So when we talk about climate change, we need to be very specifically, because the people, based on this idea of climate change, and now many people talk about climate emergency, don't really understand this. The politicians that attend the Conference of Parties every year, they are trained about the aspects of climate change, and usually they know that climate change is a problem originated by extractivism and the style of life that the northern countries have installed through Occident at planetary level. And so they understand that we need to stop climate change, stopping the cause. And in the last 30 years, Conference of Parties have been talking about how to stop the cause, but never really talk seriously about how to stop the damages and the consequence of climate change. Each time that people from civil society that usually are at the margins in this Conference of Parties want to talk about damage and consequences, we come back to talk about what determines climate change and that we need to stop what determines climate change, and they have centered it on the issue of fossil industry and the extractivist industry, but never talk about seriously what to do about climate change. And this, at this policy level, has produced a problem in which we have the northern countries, in which most of the data has been built up in these last 50, 60, 70 years in the Western world, because we must accept that the country that most work on this aspect is the United States. And today, the United States supports 40% of the budget of the IPCC, which is the main research nucleus of the global governance, the United States supports with 40% of the budget of this space, the IPCC, and the United States have inserted in the almost 60% of the research members of the IPCC. So now with the situation we have been established in the world, that climate change is a problem produced by man, by your human beings, and the level of organization of its economy, and managed by the energy fossil fuels and the extractivist industry. Most of the work of this Convention of Parallel Climate Change came together in Paris, and that was the first time that the conference spoke about that extreme heat was a problem. The Paris Agreement in 2015 established that the main problem for the world was not the fossil fuel industry, but were the consequences and cost of extreme temperature. And showed that clearly through the IPCC that if we reach 2050, 2015, they talk about 2050, the temperature will increase a minimum of 2.8 degrees centigrade to a possible maximum of 7.8 degrees centigrade if we don't stop using fossil fuels, and if we shouldn't stop the extractivist model of the economic condition of society. But still, at that meeting in Paris, although civil society tried to put forward the idea, but, hey, my friends, blokes, let us talk about consequences, let's talk about damage. The politicians and a big part of scientists are still talking about stopping fossil fuels and not talking about the consequence of this. When we arrived at the conference of in Glasgow, COP, I believe there was COP 24, 20, I don't remember the name. There, an important group of people obtained the position that we need to talk about consequences and damages. And that started the process to discuss the constitution of a global fund for damage and loss. But we're still talking about that we should stop fossil fuels. And no one here is talking about stopping damage and consequences. And what's happening in the world? Today, the northern rich countries of this planet, that the most polluted, are the principal producers of climate change, are still contaminating the planet using their industry, their energy, their fossil fuels. As always, in many cases now, in the last 2 years, the level of use have increased, particularly with the wars in Gaza and in Ukraine. And they also, parallel to this increase of contamination, and that means making the planet more hot or hotter, they also have increased the action on adaptation. They have set up, for instance, in the United States and Canada, Department of State's ministry, practically ministry, that deal with extreme heat, as the Paris Agreement demanded to most of the governments of the world. As most of the governments that signed the Paris Agreement knew that we needed to put in the Global South Minister of Extreme Heat or Secretary of State of Extreme Heat. Today, in the northern part of the world, the richest community, those that are producing the climate change, climate emergency, not only they're still doing the same business, so the world is irreversible. We are going to the situation of increasing temperature at least to 5.8 degrees centigrade in 2050. But also, they have the most clear policies, strategies and policies to limit the impact in their communities of extreme heat. So in the United States, in Canada, you have every year the temperature arrives as heat waves, as the synergy of heat waves and the effect of the urban heat island. They have plans that have money, that have preparation of all the structure of the state, Minister of Health, Minister of Transport, Minister of Catastrophes, and they have plans that really are adapted to the level of increase of temperature, being each year that happen, very, very careful about how they synchronize properly the level of alerts from, the green alert, yellow alert, orange alert, and red alert. And they have trained their people. They have trained their communities. Today, the poorest communities in the United States, and I can say that because I've spoken to many African people, and they don't believe there is poverty in the United States. Of course there is poverty. Not as much as a colonized territory as Africa is, but there is poverty. And the poor Americans are very active to confront the state in order to demand action on extreme heat. They demand jobs, they demand money, but they demand action on extreme heat because they know that extreme heat kills their parents, kills their grandparents, kills their babies, kills their disabled people. But in the southern part of the globe, no one is talking about this. So while Canada, while the United States, while Europe, United Kingdom, Sweden, Norway, Australia, China are having problems to confront extreme heat, we still in the South, talking about adaptation, blah, blah, blah. Adaptation is a blah, blah word. That's good for scientists that make a lot of money in this global South, makes a lot of money with publishing papers on, the extreme heat is causing a lot of problems, but in policy action, nothing. But our governments in the global South, my friends, in South Africa, in Argentina, in Zimbabwe, in Malaysia, instead of doing work on controlling the costs and damages on our communities of extreme heat, the principal vector of climate change in our territories, they are doing work in emitting less, trying to show that they are producing a smaller emission of contaminating gases. As you know, Argentina is a very low emitter of gases of global warming, less than 0.8% of the global impact, while China and the United States together represents almost 80% of the countries that, because their life conditions really are putting the planet in danger. So our colonized governments, and in a way our colonized science and scientists, we are not doing the proper job that we need. So in our territories, there is no work on extreme heat. And we're still in a situation in which policy members, government offices are still doing with the researchers, with the South global researchers, still doing blah, blah, blah. Publish a lot of papers, put in the media they are doing work on extreme heat, but the people in our territories still dying, still sickening, and still each time the extreme heat arrives to their villages, to their cities, to their works, to their schools, putting a lot of money from their own pockets, not from the government, to confront the problem, with the silence of the political community and the scientist community. So we decided to do this month of action in order to discuss this aspect, because we believe that the communities that have been affected, as a matter of fact, are right holders. They are not stakeholders, they are right holders. They have the right to have the same treatment as human beings than the American community, than the Canadian community, than the European communities, than the Chinese community. And we need to force our governments to do what they should do, really, is to look at the issue of extreme heat that is really affecting our weak cities, our badly constructed cities, our lack of capacity to resolve this problem. So this is the idea to discuss this, and I invite the director of South Africa to make the introduction and to start the dialogue. Vusi Masilela is an excellent colleague that have worked in the last months to see if we can obtain this seminar to discuss the proper things. But before I just invite Meg Shivanda, I congratulate you, Meg, for your excellent workshop yesterday in Zimbabwe. If you just say hello, introduce yourself, please. Go ahead.
Hello, greetings, everyone. I'm Honorable Meg Spanda from Zimbabwe, and also in this month of action, I play a role as the Director for International Relations and Partnerships. I'm really humbled to be part of this engagement in South Africa, and I feel that South Africa, we are neighbors. We almost share the same temperatures or the same, we have got similar geography, similar weather. So what Dr. Carlos is speaking to, I think is not a new, even the after effects of extreme heats, we feel the same. I remember in the community where I work, sometimes we have temperatures reaching as far as 40 degrees, that is during the heat wave season. So I'm happy to hear what South Africa is doing and also to learn. Over to you, Dr. Carlos. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Meg. Congratulations again. It was an excellent meeting with the participation of the rights holders. I mean, right holder, not stakeholder, because they have been a colonized world. Stakeholder is something we need to be very critical. As a matter of fact, our communities, elderly people, pregnant women, babies, youth, elderly people, of course, together with animal communities, our animals that live with us, even silvestre animals, are also right holders. And I think that we need to recognize, Meg, that you did a fantastic job yesterday with these communities at your workshop, and to have a very in-depth discussion that really put us near to encounter solutions. So our congratulations to you from, the Committee of the Months of Action. Vusi Masilela, the floor is yours. Nice to be hosting this workshop in a country like South Africa that I really love. I work with. I remember my times at the World Conference on Racism in Durban, and my work with communities really was a very good and very a special experience to me, because I learned a lot from there. So Vusi, go ahead, please.
Thank you once again, Dr. Carlos, and thank you to my fellow colleagues, including Mr. Max Banda. Doctor and the listeners, as you aforementioned, that South Africa is most dominantly a colonized state that is still oppressed to a certain extent. Then, however, we need to have ways of mitigating and empowering our communities with the knowledge that has to do with heat waves and extreme heat, especially the ones that are directly affected in our communities. Because when you check South Africa, it has now converted or transitioned itself into a capitalist state. It is no longer a socialist or a communist state. Now, the people that suffer the most are not people like me and you, because me and you might be having air conditioners and fans in our offices to actually mitigate extreme heat or the heat waves that we are
Recording
experiencing
in
on a daily
progress.
basis in South Africa due to industrialization. However, in addition to that, the local to global initiative has to start locally to have fires, take them and stop them. They are having a shortage of water. In South Africa, we currently have water shedding. So especially for pregnant women and the elderly that go to clinics, we need to have programs whereby we can assist them to have access to clean water, to have access to food security and vegetation. Because when these heat conditions affect the crops, they affect the temperature and the atmosphere and the rain, our people cannot plant, our people cannot drink water. Automatically, the babies will not be healthy, the adults will not be healthy, the disabled will not be healthy. Therefore, this month of action